On this episode of Untrained, we're going to talk to Travis Thomas, a speaker, author, and coach. He's worked with teams like the Red Sox and the Yankees and companies like Gatorade and Pepsi. And he knows firsthand just how often people lack confidence. He's seen it so often, he wrote a book called Confidence is Overrated, Why Courage is the Antidote and Feelings Make Cowards of Us All. So we're going to be talking about that. Confidence, why we don't often have it, and what we can do in those instances, what we can focus on, what muscles we can develop, and how we can do that for ourselves and our teams. Join us.
Welcome to Untrained. Hey, Whitney.
Hey, Iris.
Hey, we have a great guest today, someone I know from Limitless Minds, Travis Thomas. He's a speaker, author, and coach, and has served as a leadership and team dynamics coach for the U.S. men's soccer team. It's a lot, Travis. That's a lot. But I feel impressed, though.
Well, the longer you make the title, the more impressive it sounds.
Exactly.
100%.
And you also have an MFP and a TDA and an SD and an MBA and all the things.
Were you about to say I had an STD? I don't.
We are leaving that in.
Not that I know of. No, I think those are the only initials that you could maybe put after my name, but I can't claim that one either.
Well, you're really impressive. Worked with pro baseball teams, Yankees, Red Sox. You work with companies, Gatorade and Pepsi, among other things. And now you have 2 books, right? So you've got...
I do.
Yeah, 3 words for getting unstuck, live, yes, and, which we'll also talk about. And tell us about your new book.
Yeah, so the new book that came out in December of 2024 is very much, it's very personal to me, but it also kind of highlights the last 10 to 15 years of coaching as a one-on-one kind of performance coach, and also working with all the teams that I've worked with, and some of the common themes that have come up during that time. So the book is called Confidence is Overrated, and it just felt like the message that I wanted to share, because I feel like there's so much cultural misconception around confidence and how important confidence is. And I know it was deeply impactful to me as a child. And I felt like I've been sort of unpacking and unlearning and reframing that for the last, 30 years. And so I just kind of wanted to share that, and also see how it has kind of shown up in these high performance environments as well.
Ooh, we are so here for that conversation. Unlearning confidence as our goal, as a thing we think we need to have. So get us going. Help us unlearn.
Yeah. All right. So with confidence is overrated. I start the book off talking about sort of my childhood and just feeling from an early age that, you would have a coach tell you almost in the same sentence, if not back to back, hey, go out there, be fearless. There's nothing to be afraid of. Be fearless and go out there and be courageous. And it was like we would use both of those, in the same sentence or interchangeably. And I always, the first thing that hit me was, well, wait a second, I am nervous, I am afraid. And you're telling me that I shouldn't be afraid. So now I automatically assume there's something wrong with me, right? Because, okay, if I'm supposed to be fearless and I'm afraid, and I look at my teammates, well, they don't look afraid. And so it's obviously me. So I'm already damaged goods to begin with. And then secondly, you're telling me to be courageous and fearless. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Well, what is courage then? If I'm not supposed to be afraid, what is courage? Well, courage is doing the thing that's uncomfortable. And well, wait a second, doesn't that require a little bit of fear or nerves to be courageous? Because if it's not uncomfortable, then why is it courageous? But I'm supposed to be fearless. And so now I'm really confused.
So what was it like for you? I'm just curious, as a kid, living with those 2 messages, having them embodied in your skin, what was your experience like of having those 2 polarities?
I always felt incomplete athletically. as an athlete, I always felt like, all right, I just clearly don't have quote unquote it, right? I don't have the it factor, whether that's clutch or whether that's, I'm going to take the field with supreme confidence and know that I can do well, because I didn't always feel confident, and I always felt like there was such this emphasis on be confident, be confident, be confident, and then being in this industry, so much of the work I see in the mental skills and mental conditioning space is 7 tips to become more confident, and 3 tips and 3 this, and I'm like, okay, well then when you start to break it down, and I'm speaking to 2 high performers here in the Zoom as well, who from what I heard maybe always weren't as confident either. And I just referenced, there's a great Michaela Schifrin interview right now where she says she feels confident 2 out of 10 on a day-to-day basis. Well, then if high performers at the highest level are saying that, yeah, they actually don't often feel confident, well, then how important is confidence if they continue to perform at a high level? And then you break it down and go, well, what is confidence? Well, confidence to me is a feeling. It's a feeling based on something, but it is still a feeling. I know a lot of people who have a ton of what I would call unearned confidence. They have no competence to back it up, but they can go out there and be supremely confident. It doesn't mean they're going to perform well.
And what do you think that is? How do you describe that? What do you think's going on that they can do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could, a lot of people, you can put someone in an uncomfortable situation and be like, hey, like, go out there and be funny, or go out there and compete. And they'd be like, oh, I'm amazing, I'm going to go out there and crush it. And they don't. And they might not even feel embarrassed or shame as a result, but man, you put them out there again and they're going to be supremely confident. Wow, that must feel good. How about that? That must feel good to go out there and be confident and not be able to perform. But what would you rather have? Would you rather feel great and perform poorly, or would you rather actually maybe go out there and be a little nervous and perform at a high level? And so if we just say that confidence is then a feeling, it's not the most important thing that's going to predict our performance, right? So if I can be nervous and perform at a high level, and I can also be confident and underperform, what do those 2 things have in common? Well, they're both just feelings, and feelings don't predict our performance, right? Trevor Moawad, who, was the co-founder of Limitless Minds, we lost a few years ago, right? One of his favorite quotes that he used to say, which I love and I have in the book, he would say, feelings don't predict your performance. Behaviors and actions do.
Say that again. That's so good.
Yeah. So feelings don't predict performance. Behaviors and actions do. So what I've transitioned to when I'm working with people now is their feelings are important. The reason they're important because they're human, right? We're all people, and so our feelings are important to us. So regardless of how someone is feeling before a performance or a competition, I validate their feelings because they're real. They're having them. So the best thing I can do is validate their feelings and say, yeah, of course, I completely understand why you feel that way, whether that's confident or nervous or whatever. And I'm going to be empathic. I'm going to be like, hey, tell me about that. Tell me why you're nervous, or hey, tell me why you feel so great today. Tell me about it. Right? I want to understand it. But if I just end the conversation there and go, awesome, go out there, you're going to do great, or right, like we haven't moved to the more important question is, great, you're feeling this or you're feeling that, awesome. Hey, if you're going to perform well today, what are the 2 or 3 most important behaviors and actions that you need to do well to help you perform at a high level? And now we shift the focus, right? That's why focus is so important. We shift the focus from how are you feeling, which is just a feeling, to what are you focused on from an action and a behavior standpoint? What are you going to do? Well, I can be really nervous, but I can go out there and I can be extremely aggressive and extremely physical, even though I'm nervous. I can go out there and be nervous and be so focused on the specific moves or the specific runs or the specific actions that I have to do. Because as we know, once I start focusing on what I'm doing, I turn the volume down on how I'm feeling, right? As I'm focused on my actions and behaviors, now I'm focused on where's my attention? My attention is on the present moment. So what am I focused on? I'm focused on what is happening, and I'm responding to what is happening, which kind of gets us to the yes and, but I'm responding to what is happening. And so what becomes less important is how I'm feeling, because I'm not really focused. If I'm focused on my feelings, I'm not focused on what I'm doing. So we're shifting the focus from however you feel, that's fine. But what actions and behaviors are you going to focus on and do? Those are probably going to predict your performance.
I was just thinking back about what it feels like as an athlete, right? So you can think about like a leader to someone that their direct report or whatever. It's like, I don't get a whole lot if my coach says to me, well, you can do it. I'm like, okay. First of all, okay, that sounds good, right? So first of all, it makes me feel like, wow, I'm going to disappoint this person because obviously they think I'm going to do it and then I can't, and I feel even more nervous now that I'm going to let this person down, right? So that's like the thought process I have in my head. So now I'm like spiraling because I'm thinking about. I was a very accomplished fencer for a while. I had a coach at Stanford, and they're like, well, you're good. You're a world champion. You can do it. Right. And I'm like, oh, God, I should know how to do it. But I'm so freaking nervous. I'm so nervous. But you're absolutely right. If he just gave me like, OK, here's something you think about, work on this one thing, it would definitely get me out of my head and into the task. And then as I'm doing the task, it's sort of like a warm up and I'm getting into like, OK. And then from there, as a high performer, I don't get stuck on that task. I keep going because then once that task is done, I look at the task and I think, wow, okay, I can do this one step. And then it gives me the confidence to go to the next step, right? So I just wanted to emphasize what it felt like as an athlete or even as a direct report when someone's like, well, I believe in you, you can do it. I'm like, well, that's really nice information, but that makes me feel even worse because I should be doing it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Winnie.
Well, I was just going to say, I think as high performers, we should expect to feel a lack of confidence because we're growth oriented and ambitious. So that means that the context is constantly going to change. And where we built confidence in one context, we are going to outgrow it and we have to build it in the next one. So I just want to really say yes to Travis. Confidence is not a skill. It's a state of being that is based on a lot of other muscles we need to develop. And if we're a high performer, we can count on a lack of confidence more than we can count on our confidence.
Yeah, and going back, it's funny, so much of this from a coaching standpoint or a managing standpoint or a mentoring, parenting, and however you want to look at it, we're just missing the opportunity. Like, we're so close to missing the opportunity because Iris, if your coach had come to you before a match and been like, you're going to do great, right? You're going to go out there and do awesome. And you're sitting there going, well, wait, I'm concerned about this and this and this. Mm-hmm. But if they were, and you voiced that and they heard you and listened and they're like, oh, hey, I completely understand where you're coming from. But hey, Iris, I just want to let you know the reason that you're on this team is because you have this skill and this ability, and I've seen it in you countless times. And I so believe in your ability to respond to situations. I've seen you do it over and over and over again. And I know that you have the capacity to go out there and do it again today. And so that encouragement, which is based on, because when we know that when we're nervous, we go to the negativity bias and we start focusing all the things that we don't believe in, or we're thinking about the negative things. And when someone comes in, and not that they're blowing smoke, they're reminding us who we are. Right? They're reminding us of the strengths that we have. They're not just blowing smoke. Oh, go out there. You're great. You're going to crush it. They're reminding us, remember, no, Iris, you're on this team because no one has more experience than you do. I know that you've handled every situation. And yes, you're competing against an elite performer today. But I know if you focus on your strengths, you focus on your gifts, I know you can go out there and perform at a high level. And it's like, oh, right. This is who I am. And this is what I find myself doing more often with athletes and high performers. It's you're empathically validating how they're feeling, and then you're almost reminding them, hey, just don't forget who you are. Right. And I think before we started recording, we started to talk about the difference between belief and confidence. And I think if I would have continued the book longer, because the conversations I've had after writing the book, it's getting into the intricacies of what's the difference between belief and confidence. To me, confidence is a feeling. Belief is an understanding, right? Belief is evidence. Evidence is based, right? I believe in my ability because I've demonstrated it previous. I believe in my ability because I've put in the time, I've put in the work, I've put in the preparation. I have a background of evidence to show, you know what, I believe in myself. I might not feel confident today, but do I believe in my ability? Do I believe in my strength? I was working with a few professional soccer players, two different players in the same week. They were getting ready for preseason. And at the end of each call, both of them were like, hey, I'm just not feeling confident going into camp. And I was like, okay, great. They're like, can you help me? I was like, sure. And I started to say, I said, okay, tell me what you're feeling. Oh, this is a step up and this, and then, you know, I said, all right. I said, listen, I said, do you believe that you have the ability to play at this level? And the one player was like, absolutely. I said, do you believe that whatever the coaches ask you to do, that you're going to be able to adapt and work your hardest to do it? He's like, absolutely, 100%. I said, do you believe that they can throw anything at you that you can't respond to? No, not at all. I said, so why does your confidence matter? And he's like, you're right. You're right. Of course. So that belief and confidence, they're not the same thing. And so I can believe in myself and not be confident. But if I remember, oh, wait a second, I've done hard things before. I've always stepped up, no matter when the level raises, and I can do it again. So now just focus on responding to what the demand is, instead of focusing on whether I feel confident or not. And all of us know that the confidence tends to come after. It comes after we were courageous. It comes after we committed to just focusing on what's being asked of us. We commit to it, we have courage in doing so, and then we get that sense of, oh, I can do this. And confidence kind of comes in on the back end and says, oh, yeah, you can do this. But it doesn't always come, it rarely comes on the front end.
So if we were to make this a formula, it's like belief plus focus equals good enough confidence to get the job done.
Yeah, well, it's the equation I created at the end of the book. I just call it V plus E equals P, right? If we look at that from a coaching standpoint, V is validation, right? So regardless of how they're feeling, my job is to validate how you're feeling. It's fine. It's normal. You're normal. Yeah, I totally. And because why? Because they're feeling it. Why would we argue with, if someone's feeling something, the worst thing we can do is try to convince them that they shouldn't be feeling that way. It just makes them feel smaller. Yep. It makes them feel less than. And so when we can validate that and say, hey, oh, wow, tell me about that. I completely understand. Yeah, it's a big game. I mean, center court at the US Open, right, is Billie Jean King's, right? Pressure is a privilege. So whenever someone comes to me with nervous feelings, the first thing I do is go, yeah, absolutely. I get it. Of course. This is the Olympics. This is the World Cup. This is a district final in high school. Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. This is cool. It means something to you. Yeah, pressure is a privilege. It's great. So you validate, and then you just move to the E, V plus E. The E for me is encourage. Now it's just my job to encourage you to commit, encourage you to focus on your actions and behaviors, which is, I believe in you. Hey, this is an awesome opportunity. I believe in you. I know that you have you've got the ability, right? You've earned the right to be here, right? So focus on those 2 or 3 behaviors that you can do today. Keep coming back to the present moment. Focus on those behaviors. And regardless of what happens, I think you're going to have a good match or a good. And so the P equals P, which is what? Which is progress. We're just moving them into progress. Again, we're not controlling the result. We're just moving them towards progress, which gets them or us to the next step or the next level, good or bad, regardless of what happens. We took action, therefore there's progress. And then we just kind of repeat that cycle over again.
Travis, how important do you think it is? Because I'm shifting how I feel about this. For me to say, I believe in you. I think you can do this. I think you got the the encouragement part versus them to say, I believe in me, and here's why. Here are the ways I believe in myself.
Yeah. And I think obviously self-belief is the most important thing, but we're not always going to believe in our ability until we've proven to ourselves that we can. And so that's why I think my job is to kind of give you this sense of, hey, I believe in you. And so all we're trying to do is just nudge into that growth zone of discomfort. And part of belief is, hey, regardless of what happens, I believe that you're going to be able to adapt and grow and learn from this. So again, it's when we all know this, when we become outcome based, now it's a zero-sum game, which is the belief is based on, well, how did you do? Well, you failed. Well, I guess I shouldn't have believed in you, compared to, hey, you went out there. Hey, how did you feel? What'd you focus on? And so when I'm working with a player and a player, let's say that the thing that they don't do well is they're intimidated being physical on the field. That's soccer. I work with a lot of soccer players. I'm like, hey, working with a player, and the thing that they're stuck at is their game is not progressing because they're afraid to be physical. And I was coached growing up. I was afraid to be physical, and I would have a coach say, "You just need to go out there, need to run through a wall. I need you to be aggressive. I need you to be an animal." I'm like, I don't know how. How do I do that?
Right.
And so as I'm working with players, regardless of whatever the skill of growth is, I might say, "Hey, what position do you play?" "Okay, you play in the midfield." "Hey, how many one-on-one physical duels do you have in a half?" And they might be like, "I don't know, maybe 5 or 6. I was like, "Okay, how many of those duels do you win?" "I don't know, 1. I was like, "Okay, awesome. All right. Hey, this half, can you go out there? I want you to try to win 2 physical duels. Go win 2 physical duels this half." Mm-hmm. Can you, do you think you can do that? "Yeah, I think I can go win 2. Awesome, let's go win 2. They come off at halftime. "Hey, how'd you do?" "Well, I tried to win 2, but I only won 1. "Awesome. You tried, all right, I won 2. This half, let's go out there, let's win 2. And they come out, "How'd you do?" "I won 2 duels. It's fantastic." Do you see what's possible? Do you see what you're capable of? "All right, next half. You think we can get 3? Let's see if we can get 3. And all we're doing is that we're shifting that belief one moment at a time. Because all we're getting them to do now is, instead of focusing on this is scary, we're getting them to focus on, hey, can I just go win one? Can I go win one? If they win one, what do they immediately get that boost of? "Oh, I can do this. Hey, hey, coach, I did it. Go win another one." "Okay, yeah, I'll go win another one." And so instead of convincing someone, then they need to transform their entire personality into being someone that they're not. I was never going to be an animal on the field. But if a coach could have put his arm around me and said, "Hey, listen, hey, can you go out there and win 3 duels for me this half?" I could have processed that in my head and gone, "Oof, yeah, that's uncomfortable, but I bet you I can get to 3. Instead of making me feel that I was less than for who I wasn't, and I knew I could never be the player that they wanted me to be because it was so far out of my character.
I almost feel like the word confidence sounds like an easy out. It's an easy out for the athlete, right? Like if I had more confidence, then I could do it, right? And you're saying, no, we're focused on the wrong thing, and you're feeling this fear, so you're kind of like using this confidence. I don't want to say it as an excuse, but like an out of like, all right, I'm going to excuse myself from doing the hard thing because maybe if I had more confidence. And the other thing too that I'm hearing is I do think that some of the better coaches will do what you said, which is like, I'm going to think one layer deeper rather than yell at my student to say, hey, have confidence. I really have to think a little bit harder about what's one thing I can say to them to get them focused on moving in a direction. And I'm not saying there are good coaches and bad coaches, but sometimes I think it's an easy out for a coach to just be like, well, I don't really know what to say, but I am going to just tell them that they should have more confidence. So
yeah.
And I don't mean to paint it in a negative light, but that's kind of what I'm hearing is like confidence can become this sort of easy out.
Yeah, and then we tend to think that there is ability. Right now, it's well, I'm not confident because I don't have enough ability. And to your point, Iris, was like, I posed the question in the book, right? Just as a parent, would I rather have my children be more confident or more courageous? Right? If I pose it that way, like, give me courage every time. And so if we shifted what we focused on from a coaching standpoint, parenting standpoint, teaching standpoint, managing standpoint, and all of a sudden, what is then the excuse for not being more courageous? Right? Because courage doesn't require talent. It just requires the ability to try and stretch yourself into your discomfort zone.
It's to stretch yourself, but within a context of safety.
Totally.
And I think that context of safety is so important. And I think, there's all this research that men have more confidence than women, or people identify as male and female sort of historically. So that means that this courage piece and this context piece is even more important for women because they're going to need to rely on it a little bit more. But the word connection keeps coming up to me because, when you're a kid and you don't feel fearless and you get disconnected from yourself and you're disconnected from your teammates and you're disconnected from your goal. But when someone says, that like, I'm going to put my arm around you, I'm going to connect to you, I'm going to help you connect to why you want to do this, what you care about, and I'm going to help you connect to something manageable, right? So I'm going to help you connect to safety.
Yeah.
And then you can go out and do it. Whereas in the old scenario, you're disconnected and you feel unsafe. So I just wanted to name the context that I was hearing, and also that for some groups of people, courage is going to be more important because they tend not to be bestowed the confidence.
Yeah, well, and I think you nailed it, right? So if we look at this through the context of psychological safety, right, the highest performing teams, right, have the highest levels of psychological safety. And what is psychological safety? It's where people feel safe enough to take risks and be vulnerable.
And it comes down to actions and behaviors, right? When they studied it comes down to eye contact. It comes down to conversations. It comes down to being greeted with respect, even when you make a mistake. So it comes down to the level of behavior. And
so, and so if I'm a leader, I can only expect the people I lead to be courageous to the extent that they feel safe. And so what is my job then as a leader? My job is to create an environment of that psychological safety where people feel, and that's the whole thing, the whole outcome. All I'm trying, if I'm about progress and growth, what do I need? I need you to push yourself. I need you to try to work on that skill that's not your strength. I need you, if I'm a sales manager, I need you to make a few more calls than you're currently making. Hey, you're making 20 calls a week right now. Let's get that to 22 this week, right? So I'm pushing you, I'm nudging you outside your comfort zone, but I'm doing so in the process of, hey, listen, I care about you. I have your back, right? I'm here. I've got your back. I'm going to help you and support you as you learn, fail, and grow. And if we're spending our times nurturing that relationships, whether it's in the classroom as a coach or in our organizations, we're giving people permission to fail. But they're not trying to fail, but we're giving them permission to fail because we know that's where the learning is, and we're there to put our arm around them. We're there to then help them learn and grow through that process. But if they don't feel safe, like the turtle is going to, resort back into its shell. And when we're in environments where we don't feel safe or we're in we're in a state of affairs right now in a world that doesn't feel safe. Well, people are not going to take risks, and they're not going to be vulnerable, and they're not because safety, survival is always our first instinct, and so we're always going to revert back to where we feel safe.
So I love that you brought that up. I wanted to talk about, it's the end of March 2025. There's a lot of uncertainty and chaos. A lot of people are triggered, more than triggered, right? So what are you finding is important in your work with people? And maybe we can all answer that.
Yeah, I would say, and again, I know Iris and I were talking a little bit before we started. There is this sense of security and certainty, and what is it that makes people feel comfortable, right? It's certainty and security, which I would argue is always a false sense of certainty or security. But what do we do? What do we do? Who do we look to that usually gives us our sense of certainty and security? Well, we usually look to the leader, who's in charge, right? If I work for an organization and the CEO is preaching a message of, here's our plan, here's how we're going to handle this. I believe in the direction that we're going, and hey, wow, I feel certain and secure. And so leadership, right? Leaders should be modeling the behaviors that would promote certainty and security. Well, leadership right now, wherever your political lines fall, it seems very volatile. It feels very uncertain and unsecure. And so it only makes sense that we're going to feel that individually as a society or as a country. And so what can I control individually? Well, I know, just like when the pandemic was dropped on us, we find out really quickly what we control and what we can't control. Right, so much, right? I control my attitude, I control how hard I work, and I control how I respond to everything that is happening outside of my locus of control, which is everything. And so when I focus on the things that I can control, which brings us back to the confidence versus courage aspect, when I focus on hey, I don't know what's going to happen, I don't know, but I control how am I going to behave regardless of what happens. You know what? I'm going to be engaged. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be adaptable, right? Hey, I'm going to go into these a day full of meetings, and I'm going to be curious, and I'm going to be supportive. I get to choose how I'm going to show up, regardless of what's going on around me. I control where I'm going to put my effort. And I love to say we cannot control 100% of what happens to us. And we always control 100% of how we respond. That's the yes and, right? The yes is the acceptance of what is happening. The and is based on what is happening, and here's how I'm going to respond to it. I'm going to respond to it in a collaborative way instead of being in denial or competition of it. And so the more complex the world is, the simpler my focus needs to become, right? The bigger the game, the smaller my focus needs to be, right? Take the complex, make it simple, take the big and make it small. And it always comes back to what can I control right now? I can't control the president. I can't control the economy. I can't control the weather. I can control what's my attitude going to be today? What am I going to focus on and put my effort towards? And regardless of what happens, how am I going to respond?
And I love to yes and at the moment.
Yes.
Yes. And I think there are times when our nervous system or our well-being, we can sort of, for example, I could do all of that at work, and then I go home and I'm like, okay, I'm doing great. And my kid says something to me, it irritates me, and I have an outburst because
I can't relate to
I'm
that
out of juice.
Go ahead with it.
right. But I got nothing left, and I've used everything up. Right. So particularly if we've got multiple roles in our life, I think sometimes we have to. Well, the other thing we can control is sometimes. Some people's situations are different than others, but how we're taking care of ourselves, we're taking care of our well-being, because that really influences how we show up. And I think there is, again, just like we have a culture that's like, be more confident, it's try harder, right? And sometimes the try harder runs out of fuel. And then we've got to do something else.
Yeah. And so, and again, so with the yes and, the yes and is never about sugarcoating a difficult situation.
Mm-hmm.
And, like if I'm coaching someone who's in a toxic relationship or a toxic work environment, what we're going to focus on is, hey, let's come back to what we can control, right? We're going to focus on what we can control. It doesn't mean it's going to change the environment. It doesn't mean it's going to change the other person. So a part of that scenario, a real part of that scenario is, hey, if you just continue to control what you can control, I guarantee things are going to get better. No, I can't guarantee that. There might be a point where I have to say to myself, honestly, hey, I'm controlling what I can control. Things are not getting better. I need to be courageous, and I need to be willing to leave this relationship or leave this environment because I need to take care of myself first. And if that means, well, hey, I don't have another job prospect. What? Right. These are the decisions we're always having to make for ourselves. Sometimes we have to leave a bad situation before we find a new one. Sometimes there's a opportunity that comes along and allows us to have no gap in between. But controlling what we can control doesn't mean that we're ever going to control someone else or that environment. But it is keeping our focus on what's most important. But part of that also is, hey, you might come to a point where it's just not healthy for you to stay in this situation. And now that courage is, do you have the courage to leave that even though you don't know what's going to happen as a result? But it's not sugarcoating and going, yeah, yes, and it's going to be fine. Yes, and it's going to get beat. No, it might, but it's not about controlling that external outcome.
We were just talking, I was listening to Whitney, and she's also talking about this sort of duality. Things can be difficult and you can resource yourself. It can be difficult at work and you can still find some level of joy because that really helps to replenish you. So I think you're right. It's a yes and I was just going to add, because you had said, can everyone weigh in about the situation? When 9/11 happened, I was at Stanford, and the professor there, Gerhard Casper, was a German who had lived through the war, and he said one of the most interesting things to me that felt really disingenuous at the time, because we had just watched all of the towers come down, and all of these young students came into his class, which was on constitutional law, and he's like, how's everyone doing? And we're all freaking out. We're like, oh my God, and this is happening, and the world's coming to an end, and we're all going to die. We were just like, I remember that it was very, very tense in the room. And Dr. Casper basically was saying, the best thing we can do right now is hit pause. Like, there's nothing to do. Yeah. Yes, we're having these emotional feelings, but it's important that we don't move forward, right, in this state, that we find ways that we can grieve, come together, connect with each other, think about what we can control, and make sure that the next step that we make is step that is made in a space where we are more grounded, right? So I don't know, but it felt disingenuous. Like, we're feeling so many things right now. Why? How are you telling us to calm down? And he wasn't really. He was just saying, like, before we make the next move, take a breath, take a beat, take a pause, think about it for a second.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that's sort of that's an invitation, like, to pause with ourselves. How are you? How are you doing? How are you showing up? How's that going? Yeah. Right? Yeah. How aligned are you?
That's the validation that you cannot you cannot fast forward someone to a solution until you've given them permission to feel everything that they're feeling. Right. And so that's often what we do. I do that as a parent, but we do that when we're like, if I'm, in the corporate space or a coach, it's like, listen, this is where I need to get you guys there as quickly as possible. So hurry up with your feelings so I can get you there. And the reality is like, you can't do that. because the psychological safety comes from the feeling heard and seen and valued. Like, yeah, I totally get how you're feeling right now. Tell me more. Is there more to it? Open that up. Tell me more. Is there more? I like to use the analogy of a helium mylar balloon, right? If I want to blow fresh air into the helium balloon and replace the helium with fresh air, I can't start blowing fresh air while the helium's still in there. So what I need to do is I need to squeeze all the helium out first. And that's giving that permission to, like, if someone's feeling something, go, okay, wow, okay. Tell me more about that. Why? Tell me, is there more? Is there more there? Is there more there? Is there more there? This is the entire validation process. And then once all of the stuff is out on the table and they feel heard and they feel loved and they feel valued, now you can say, yeah, I get it. This is really rough. Hey, so what's the next step? What's that best next step look like? Right? What are you feeling? What's that next step look like? Where do we go from here? And again, it's acceptance of the new reality. Yeah, this is it. This is what's going on. So what do you think? What do you think the next step for us or for you right now? What does peace look like? What's progress look like and feel like? And they're like, well, I think maybe I should do this, or maybe I should try that. Encouragement. Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a great next step.
It reminds me, talking about the urgency. In January, I was in white urgency. I didn't even know what that was. And I was looking at Megan Jo Wilson's post. She's another guest of ours. And she named it. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what I'm in. And I ended up taking a course with her where we really looked at our white urgency and our responses and unpacking that. And it was arriving at more aligned way of responding and a more sustainable way of moving forward, rather than that very, very easy to access urgent response, which I think most of us have trained within ourselves at some point in time. So I liked, Iris, your pause story, and Travis, sort of what you're talking about is the slowing this down and resourcing it and moving forward with connection and intention.
Yeah, I mean, what you're both talking about, it always reminds me of the Viktor Frankl quote, which is one of my favorites, which is, in between stimulus and response, there is a space, right? Yeah. And that space is the pause. That space is the neutral, right? That space is the yes and. It's that in that space is where we have the power to choose our response, right? That's where we have choice. Consciously.
Yeah. And without that pause or that space, it's often unconscious.
Right. It's just a reaction. It's just an emotional reaction, right? The pause is where we can notice our feelings, our thoughts, our emotions, our judgments, and we can still feel them and still choose to respond, not based on our feelings, but based on a conscious choice to be most effective.
I think that's a good way to end today's conversation.
Yeah.
So I feel like very grounded right now and ready for the rest of the day, going from a place of groundedness and not and consciousness.
And we have my sign that I made for myself. Are you rooted and grounded? It was my reminder.
I love it. I love it. What a great reminder to have all day.
Travis, thank you so much for joining us on the Untrained Podcast. Whitney, what do we say at the end of every podcast?
Keep untraining.
Keep untraining. And if you like what you hear, you know what to do. You got to subscribe.
You know what to do.
You know what to do. Apple Podcast.
Smash that subscribe button. Smash it.
Yes. Do what Travis says. Do what Travis says. That's the next best step. All right. Till next time, keep untraining.